81 registered folks who voted after the deadline. The deadline was October 15th, the deadline to register. Then there was 11,326 people who voted, yet they were not on the voter roll until November 7th. No, they weren't on the voter roll on November 7th, but showed up after December 4th as being on the voter roll. 18,000 voted and were later removed from the roll after the election. And then this is the kicker: 74,243 mail-in ballots were sent in with no accompanying evidence that ballots were ever mailed to these folks that actually voted. Shared passwords among election officials. Jovan Pulitzer said that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Or rather, how did he phrase it? This was the aperitif, am I pronouncing it right? The appetizer, aperitif, and they are allowing the folks to hang themselves. And that there will be, the kicker or more is coming later. This is a good thing, no? Yes. And also we're learning that Georgia is now going to conduct an audit. And actually, I saw an interview on Rumble where Michigan will be beginning an audit, but they still have to go through the process of legislative stuff or maybe subpoenas, and that probably won't start until October. Then, Wisconsin is starting their audit, right? Yes. Also, Oklahoma. So now the thing is this, that there is a call for all 50 states to be audited. And the issue is this: some of the races, in the states, state races, and also races in the House and Senate, may not be as one thought they were, may not be as they turned out. Actually, I think the guy in Georgia, Perdue, was not necessarily the loser. He got 50% plus, where there wasn't a runoff necessary. Oh my God, how this is all very disappointing to the American people. We are learning that our system is so corrupt. Can we trust our Supreme Court? Can we trust our judicial system? We don't know. Who can be trusted? Well, we trust Trump, right? Because he puts, why do we trust Trump? Because we saw the policies that were working prior to the pandemic or plandemic. Trump put the American people first. He put American first, and that's what the American people want. That's what the founding fathers wanted. They wanted the American people first. Yes, that's what a republic is about, the security and interest of the American people. Yes. We are inundated with everything that goes against us. We are inundated with everything that is against our interests as an American citizen. For instance, illegal aliens. I talk about that all the time. That's the main reason why I'm no longer voting for a Democrat. I am so sick. Obama is the problem. I think it started with Obama. I'm not sure. But those of us who voted for Obama were hoodwinked. He is the problem. I was listening to somebody saying that he has like a skiff or something in his room. I think that was an earlier show that on this station, that Obama is sort of like pulling the strings. He doesn't have the interests of the American people. The rumors that were said about Obama were true. We all thought they were like conspiracy theorists or people who just didn't like black folks or whatever. Who knows? We thought it was racism. I don't know. They just didn't like Obama. They didn't want a black president. But it was the truth, okay? This guy wants America to be socialist/communist. Am I right? So it was a very, very bad thing why Obama even got involved in the process, why he became our president. It was a very bad thing. We made a mistake, and now Biden is continuing it and making it worse. And Obama, it's like they knew all along for decades what they were going to do. They knew they had this plan. And I guess if Hillary would have gotten in, would have won the presidency in 2016, she would have followed through with the same plan that Biden is. I don't know. They're not interested in the interests of the American people. Who knows what they're interested in? But it's not us. They're interested in someone say, what is it, Project 21 or something, or Agenda, or the Great Reset. You hear all these labels, but one thing we know for sure, it's not our interest. It's globalism. It's globalization. It's world domination and power and control. And it's the elitists being in control of everything. Am I right? Okay, now we have Judge Joe Brown. Hi, Judge Joe Brown. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Well, hello there.
Hi, I'm good.
How are you, my dear?
I'm good. And I know you were feeling a little under the weather, so you let me know how long you can talk, and that will whatever.
For about 10, 15 minutes before the voice wears out, but I'll try.
Okay, I appreciate. One of the things that Judge Joe Brown and I have in common is that we both graduated from Dorsey and we both graduated from UCLA. I graduated there as an undergrad. He went to the law school. What I want to ask you, Judge Joe Brown, is this: How is it that you, a black man, and Bill Cosby and Larry Elder, who's running for governor of California, were able to be successful, very successful black men? Very successful.
We don't think like slaves.
Okay, go on. Elaborate.
We do not think like slaves. What so many people want to label white supremacy does exist, but it's just adversity. Some ancestors dealt with adversity that had big teeth, large size, and a big appetite, and they called him Simba. But they didn't hide in the waffle huts behind the briar bush village fences. They sent their 13-year-old boys out to kill them as a rite of passage into manhood. So adversity is one thing. Adversity can make you angry. It can make you focused. It can give you a cause. It can make you achieve, but it's not something to cause you to be paralyzed like, oh, woe is me. Nothing's going to work, so I don't even need to try. And when you don't think like a slave, you may have more adversity facing you than other people do, but you can overcome the adversity, and in the process of learning how to do that, and in the process of the practice that you get from doing it, and in the wisdom and discernment you get from the experience of conquering or facing down adversity, you can go a lot further than ordinary people can who do not face such adversities.
And I think that you and Bill Cosby and Larry Elder, you're a different generation than these young men today, millennials, Gen X, and yet they feel defeated. Why is that?
Well, yeah, the young folk don't. My parents were made nervous by my generation. I'm not made nervous by the youngest generation of adults. I'm very disappointed in them. They're not very radical. They don't think out of the box. They're too damn complacent. They feel entitled. They're scared of everything. They do not understand what being brave and courageous is about. They do not understand duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, having a purpose and a cause, staying on focus to make where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. They look at everything as something they are entitled to, and they live in a safety bubble that's about to bust. And it's not a pretty picture.
And things are not getting better, they're getting worse. But this I want to ask you. When you were at UCLA, you mentioned to me that you studied W.E.B. Du Bois, who was the first black man who
W.B. Du Bois.
Du Bois, who was
Bois.
Du Bois, who was the first black man who graduated from Harvard, got a PhD from Harvard. You studied him. Was he a Pan-Africanist, and was he studying cultural Marxism?
He became one. See, he had a war going on with Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was everyone's favorite Negro back then because he told the black man to pick up the pail, pick up the broom, pick up the mop, pick up the plow, and just be satisfied with working where you are. Don't worry about an education. And I had enough of that growing up and going through Dorsey High, graduated mid-60s. And I can remember I had one teacher who had myself and several other black students who went on and did some things in life. And he told us he didn't think black people would be, Negroes would be happy unless they were working with their hands. So he decided he was going to flunk us an advanced comp in the 11th grade and do us a favor by derailing our college careers. Well, I've never been one to sit quietly and take anything, so I raised a ruckus. And the boy's vice principal, he was a white guy. He let me take the exam sitting at his desk, and he put an A+ on it. This guy sent it back to the teacher with an F on it, said I had to have cheated because I surely wasn't able to write that well. So anyway, I encountered him later in life, but that's another story.
But when you were at
I'm not angry enough.
Okay, but I wanted to ask you you're not angry. That was a long time ago. I think you'd get over it for sure. Hey,
now, I got over it. I had on the spot therapy.
Right. Well, let me ask you, when you were at UCLA, were you guys, I know you probably had a Black Power, Black organization or whatever. Were you guys into cultural, were you guys into cultural Marxism? Were you into Marxist theology?
We never heard that's a modern construct in the last 25 years. We would have never heard of that. Cultural Marxism. No. We had some specific objectives, which were collaborating with other people similarly situated. We called it the Third World Unity. That was Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans, some of the less popular brands of white folk. And we decided to make things right. There was some collaboration with the anti-war group, but not a whole hell of a lot of it. And the anti-war group set some stuff in stage with the feminists and the lesbians and the homosexuals and the transsexuals, transvestites. It's not good. One group, the lesbians, hated men. The feminists hated that they weren't men. The white guys who were the nerds and dorks and such like, we would term them now, who couldn't make it as white men, hated that fact. And then you had the homosexual guys who hated the fact that they hated being men. And then you had a group, the anti-war crowd, that thought war was a man thing, so the way to stop war was to change the way boys were raised to men, and if you raised them like girls, so when they grew up, they emoted and they cried and they shouted like girls instead of being so uptight and under self-control, that would somehow or another get rid of war. Well, it didn't. And that whole group got together with the premise being that marriage was an institutional form of slavery for women. They didn't quite know how to deal with sexual equality, which came in big time because the pill came in about the mid-60s. So there were all kinds of movements and all kinds of driving engines going on there. Some of them worked out badly and some of them didn't. One of which is, if you went through it, you can see it now. It's self-like. Black Americans, Afro-Americans, then black again, then et cetera, et cetera. What happened was, Negroes, blacks, then Afro-Americans, then blacks, and then Afro, and then African-Americans. That was the transition. We got such a raw deal the way we were portrayed that people were so deep off into self-hatred that they decided to deal with, I'm black and I'm proud, or black power. Just like you had Irish power or Italian power or Chinese or Asian or Korean or whatever it may have been. And that was a good thing. Now, I look around and I see LGBTQ, which is a cult, and I distinguish it from this homosexuality because there are differences. Homosexuality is you do sex a certain kind of way in your bedroom. More power to you the way you get your freak on. But they, with the LGBT cult, they make a status off of how you have sex, which I've never heard anything like that before because that's something you keep to yourself. That's private, but they want to make it public. And you look at a gay pride parade, and the equivalent, if it was a black pride parade, would be the participants walking around dressed like slaves, doing slave bug dancing to banjos and harmonicas, and capering around dressed up like monkeys on the ends of some silver chains while an organ grinder made that kind of music, or dressing up in like they're minstrels in blackface, which is exactly what you saw on the Wall Street thing in Tulsa, Oklahoma a couple of months ago. It was rather embarrassing watching that self-hatred. So you see a lot of folk who hate what they are, hate what they want to be, and they hate themselves, and they're not supposed to provide guidance.
But the reason, let me stop you for a second. The reason why I asked you that, this was in the 60s, you were a college student in your 20s, and Black America today is going backwards. So what good was it?
It's about 1959, 61, where they are right now.
Okay.
They don't have a clue. They're cowards.
Yeah, but we are supposed to be
People
progressing.
idols,
We're supposed to
but
be
we're not progressing.
right. So what good was all of that you guys went through at
It was a
UCLA?
waste of time. It wasn't a waste of time.
Yes.
Some of us got the idea, and we're trying to tell you now. But you see, let me give you a perspective. 80 years ago, you had pink panty wearing, not pink panty, you had jack-booted, goose-stepping fascists came into power. And they kind of took power in the early 30s in Germany, and they had about 6 or 7 years to propagandize the German public after they took political control. In America, we've had pink panty-wearing fascists who switch and twitch rather than goose-stepping. They took control of the media 55 years ago, and they've been propagandizing the American public for 52 years with this stuff that the Nazis only got 6 or 7 years to do. So they have glorified dysfunction until that becomes the functionality. Instead of a young black man being a college student, trying to have a job, work to support a family, nowadays the black hip somebody into gangster thug rap video and that kind of behavior, whether he is a white emulator or he's black or he's Asian. They are into being thugs, pimps, drug dealers, robbers, rapists, burglars, and murderers, and thieves. It's not cool. Back then, of course, you had an incentive to keep up in your grades and go to college so you could keep a 2A instead of getting a nominal year-long vacation in hot, sunny Vietnam where you could observe and study the insect and other verminous life up close and personal. Was not a cool thing. So now everybody walks around looking like they ought to be pushing a grocery cart with a lawn bag.
Yeah. Well, so
Not good.
yeah, it's because we've gone backwards, we regress, and I'm wondering what was it all about? Like Alfie, like the song. What's it all about? But anyway, the question.
No. That wasn't my style back then. Well, you know what it is. One of the things is that they started putting in place a fiction that it's okay to be a coward. It's not. That's a bad mark against your character as a man all throughout human history. It's all right to be dependent. That's not. Humans have been about the business of sustaining their abilities to support self and being functional adults. It's about doing your thing. Don't do what you want to do. It's about be all you can be, which I think the military made a mistake as adopting it as a model for the Army. It should be all you ought to be, because you can be a damn fool, but you ought not be one. And you've got essentially a great number of negatives about tune in, turn on, tune in, and drop out. And see, that's that hippie thing. And it is not good. That was annihilation of culture. And the interesting thing about it is the culture, the first wave of the baby boomers, we were born in 1946, 1947. In 1966, 64, 65, 66, we were 17, 18, 19. And we were just coming into our own. And we were probably better prepared than any other generation in American history and any that has come since, because we had some mandatory and strict requirements that we could not deviate from. But some of us got the bad idea that children should be allowed to make excessive numbers of choices without being prepared for it, and they invariably make the wrong choices, because it's kind of hard for a very immature person who knows little to nothing about life to be able to guide what he or she does in terms of preparing for that life. That's always what the adults of the species do. And we have gotten away from it, and we treat children like they're little people. They're not.
But the baby boomers raise children that are not responsible. They, whole.
Let me say something about that. Remember what I said. 1965, the first 3 years of the baby boom era, we were either 19, 18, or 17. The people who were in their 20s and 30s were born before us. They were the last of the generation before us. Now, the last of the baby boomers.
Oh, wait, we're going to take a break right there. We'll be back right after the break. I'm speaking with Judge Joe Brown. There's my music. This is the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells, and we'll be right back after the break.
Driving into Dallas and seeing the Texas School Book Depository looming in the distance was exciting. Too bad a murder of a president was a source of the excitement. Of course, I went to the 6th floor sniper's nest. Now it is dressed as a movie set, and no one is permitted to look out the window and down on Elm Street. But I was more interested in where the rifle was found. You would think it was left in the sniper's nest. It wasn't. 2 Dallas police officers found it down the hallway next to the stairs hidden beneath boxes of books. Officer Seymour Weitzman wrote a splendid and detailed description of the rifle he found. It looks nothing like the 20-year-old Italian Mannlicher Carcano the Warren Commission says was found. The Warren Commission lawyer questioning Weitzman must have read his report, as he starts by questioning Weitzman's expertise as to rifles. Weitzman replied he was in the sporting goods business. Sporting goods in Texas means rifles, lots of rifles, all kinds of rifles. Weitzman's retort shut the lawyer up. I left the school book building heading toward the parking lot above Daley Plaza. I wanted to check out the 14-foot tower Lee Bowers, a switchman for Union Terminal, was standing on. Bowers told the Warren Commission of a vehicle moving slowly in front of his tower just before the president's motorcade arrived. The vehicle had out-of-state license plates, a Goldwater for President bumper sticker, mud caked up to the fenders, and a man speaking into a mic. Bowers also described 2 men standing behind a fence atop the grassy knoll, following intensely the motorcade's progress down Main Street. Asked if both men were in the same position at the time of the shots, Bowers replied the heavy-set middle-aged man was, but the younger man in the plaid shirt was in the bushes. Bowers was about to add something, but was cut off by the lawyer with another question. Lee Bowers would die 2 years later in a strange, unexplained car accident. I left Dealey Plaza for the Oak Cliff section of Dallas and the house where Lee Oswald was renting a room. I parked in front, staring at the front door, letting history wash over me. Oswald, leaving work, rushed into the house, going directly to his room. Earlene Roberts, the housekeeper, told the Warren Commission a Dallas police car parked in front of the house, honked twice, then pulled away. Lee then ran out the door, grabbing his jacket. Dispatch had ordered all units to Dealey Plaza except one, which was told to remain at large for any emergencies. That patrol unit was Officer Tippett's. Now, I don't know if that was Officer Tippett parked in front of the house, but I do know Officer Tippett had 20 minutes left to live. An interesting fact is Earlene Roberts was the sister of Bertha Cheeks, a local real estate investor. Jack Ruby, 4 days before the assassination, asked Bertha if she would be interested in investing in an upscale club Ruby had in mind. She declined. I wonder if Jack asked her if she knew of a room for rent for a friend of his. That shot in Dallas changed everything. There was a direct line from Dallas to open season on politicians and citizens to 9/11, and now permanent election fraud via computer manipulation. Where will it end? How will it end? I'm Michael Calder, the author of JFK versus CIA, and if interested in the details of President Kennedy's assassination, get the hardcover edition at Barnes & Noble. And be afraid.
That's Michael Calder, his book JFK versus the CIA. Get the hard copy at Barnes & Noble. So, Judge Joe Brown, I want to ask you a question. How did the entire establishment, media establishment, go after Bill Cosby? How did public opinion change from Bill Cosby being the loving father figure / comedian actor to a serial rapist? How did public opinion change like that?
Well, there never was any proof or any confession to or an admission to any serial raping in anywhere in this, and that's an exemplar of how unreliable the press is. Well, the press got taken over, and by that I'll call it mainstream media, back in the late mid-'60s when color television was causing the movie industry to go basically bankrupt. Any adult movie house or place where adults went to movies had an interesting format which consisted of 2 movies every Thursday and Sunday, 2 cartoons, maybe 3, and it didn't make any difference what the ratings were on the movies. They just, every Thursday and Sunday changed. So they've gone out of business in the face of color TV. The studios fired a lot of the older executives and brought in this new breed who were part of the cabal that I just detailed a little while earlier about viewing marriage as a form of slavery for women, wanting to get rid of the power of men in the world and attempting to destroy that. And they got the idea that they could target minorities and come up with movies that address the lowest common denominator in a given minority and appeal to that rather than to higher, let's say, principles that somebody might have. And they made money. So Cosby in 1992 had, with FTC, Federal Trade Commission, what he needed with the financial package to get NBC. They defeated him on that, and then again in 2011, he put that package together again to get NBC. They did not want that to happen because it was against their agenda. That being said, the key to understanding this whole thing is they wanted drugs, they wanted sex, and they wanted a good time. They were called groupies. And it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Sex, drugs, and baseball, football, television, movies, you name it. And you could find the groupie. Sex, drugs, and politics. We all know about that. So they would show up wanting to get drugs, wanting to get high, wanting to get wine, whiskey, and whatever they wanted to drink, and having a good time. And they attempted to jumpstart their careers, which they weren't that talented. And I guess they couldn't do that any better than they could act, sing, and dance, whatever they were trying to get into. And in recent years, a certain group has been trying to talk them into the proposition that it wasn't their fault. And even though they're supposed to be just as strong as men and all of this other kind of stuff, it wasn't their fault. These evil men did it to them. So that becomes the same thing that you get with white supremacy being an excuse for a certain type of minority, not saying to himself, I am going to go kick this adversity in the butt, but now I've got an excuse so I don't have to do anything at all, and I have a good excuse. And it is what it is. They still have cast and couch, but it's boy on boy, girl on girl, instead of boy girl. And you were saying something a little earlier about the baby boomers. You have to understand now, the last baby boomers were born in 1966. So in 1969, they were 3 years old. When they got 20, that was in the late, mid-1980s. So the people who were having all of these children were not the baby boomers. It was the last of that pre-war generation who started off not in 1946, but in 1926 to 46, and then 46 to 66. That was my group. We did some bad things, but a lot of that was in that tail-end group that was born 1920 to 1946. 1966, they were in their mid-30s, late 20s, and they were the ones that were making stuff happen. Now, we didn't do what we needed to do, correct it, but I'm not going to take all the blame for that nonsense. And they were the ones that had this thing about everybody should have a good time because they went through the Depression. We didn't. We were born after the war when all these GIs came back and said, oh, we've been gone a long time. We got GI Bill, and we have this, and educational possibilities. We're on top of the planet. Let's do our thing. So let's make it better, and everybody's supposed to have a good time.
Oh, so you're saying it's your parents' generation?
Yes.
It's their
Those
fault.
who came of age born between 1920 and 1926 and 1946, and then for the 10 year before that, the tail end of that one.
So you're saying your
Like,
parents. So you're saying your parents' generation is what is the cause of all this permissiveness?
Not all of them, but a lot of them. They had ideas. See, they are the ones that produced the hippies.
Mm-hmm.
Hippies were late teens, early 20s in the late 1960s. The oldest baby boomers had just reached 18, 19 years old. The O'Leary and all of the ones that you hear turn on, tune in, turn on, and drop out. They were the ones that got all that hippie stuff going on. We just got out of high school.
And that hippie stuff is what started this whole thing that has degraded the society. So it's been going on for decades. Because
we want to do what we want to do instead of what we ought to do.
Exactly.
Tradition. When you give a young person, no cause, he has no purpose, his life's pretty much a mess. No responsibility. He has this beast in him that puts us on top of the planet. It's the apex predator. We kill and eat anything we want to eat. So most predators on this planet also will occasionally turn on each other. So when the predator is properly socialized and acculturated, he keeps that in check. If you don't do anything about dealing with these realities of life, then you have an out-of-control apex predator. And this apex predator can build nukes.
Now, when you were
We're always looking for excuses.
now let me ask you, when you were doing your show in Hollywood, you faced some of the same predicament, that Me Too kind of stuff that Bill Cosby faced, would you say?
Oh, well, yeah, I can tell you a story. My show was a month and a half old. It was November 1998, and they had a function in one of the major hotels, the celebration. I was having a good time. I was in my early 50s. And by the way, that shows you I had a life before I got into this, and I was always wanted to be a star. Oh, my, how thrilling, but anyway, I wound up running into another woman that went to Dorsey High. So we talked. She got up, took a long time going to the ladies' room, came back and said, "You know that guy over there, tall guy in the gray suit?" I said, "Yeah." Said he walked up and offered me $2,000 cash if I'd sign a note saying you were trying to cop a feel on me. So we went around and got statements from as many other women that I could identify that I danced with, and got statements from them. So we had to set them up. We wound up with somebody I hired to do PR to save the show. They were trying to kill it so they could embezzle money. That's what they do a lot. And when they get caught, they just try to make the next contract lucrative enough so you don't sue them. But anyway, we invented a fictional woman, and we filed these affidavits with Human Resources. And after 6 weeks, they came up with this long written letter of complaint from this fictitious woman they didn't realize was a fiction. And I told them to go to hell. I quit. And they could kiss my ass, my behind. And then I thought about it, said, no, you might like that too much, and I don't get into that kind of freak. But anyway, we brought the affidavits over, and in 6 weeks, none of them were there, and I was there for another 14 and a half years. See, they keep trying to pull that little game off on you. So the people that don't get into that Hollywood culture, stay the devil away from them, because you don't want to get involved with it because it's kind of sick.
Well, what was the purpose of doing that?
The purpose is, here it's an initiation. We called it the 6 B's. I'll clean it up. Unbelt, drop breeches, drop boxers, bend over, spread butt cheeks, get banged. And now you're an initiate. And you belong to this exclusive club where they think they can trust you because they have something on you and you have something on them, or the female equivalent. And they sit around in 5-star hotels in the lounges on leather upholstered couches, and they sip Chablis. They hide that, and they put the red on the table to look fashionable, and they nibble cheese and crackers, and they giggle about how badly they've done each other and how many times they've backstabbed each other, but they still hang around, which is an unhealthy thing. So it's not, Hollywood's a cesspool, but some places in Hollywood are like the sumps in the cesspool. They're worse than others. They have no moral scruples. Not everybody, but too many have too few moral scruples. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they're dishonest. And they get a big giggle out of the fact that they set the tone ethically and morally for the country. It is not a healthy thing.
They set the tone morally and ethically for the country. Hollywood does that. And we're seeing...
And then even the ones where they're trying to come across in a manly fashion on screen, on camera, they're going, yeah, Charlie, We got to make this move. We've got to let it hang, you know, and they're going gangster on everybody. And then when you see them in the lounge at the hotel, oh, my God, it was so fascinating. Oh, man, I just got all off when I got to play that part, man. Oh, God, it was so fantastic. Like, damn. What the hell? This dude, you've been looking at him since I've been, 11, 12, 13 years old as Macho Man, and look at him now. Goodness.
What? What was going on there?
In other words, they are very effeminate when you run into them at a studio function, right?
Yeah.
When you see them on screen, they're all this, that, and the other. And they down with the cause, real life gangster or special ops person or a spy, You go, man. Wow.
Well, you see, they've got them wearing dresses now to the award shows. The men.
Yeah, I know. Ain't that a shame? And look here. You know why people get married so often in Hollywood?
Why?
That's the only way a straight person can date, is to get married to the person you want to date. Just get yourself a prenup up front.
Oh, and that's the way a straight person can be, is to get married?
That's the only way you can date safely, is to get married first. That's why the marriages don't last long a lot of times.
Oh, I don't know what that means. What do you mean you can date safely?
In other words, with all the gold diggers, hashtag Me Too types out there and their prototypes,
Oh, I see.
it's not safe to date.
Oh,
So
I
you
see.
run into somebody where you say, "May I have your phone number?" The next move is, let's go out and see if we can stand each other for an hour. If we do that, let's get engaged and get married, and then we can date for a while. If it doesn't work, we get divorced.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So, yeah. So, what do you think? What is the next move for Bill Cosby? What is the next move for him? Will he be suing?
I have a sneaking suspicion that Dr. Cosby is going to wind up the face of the backlash against hashtag Me Too. See, hashtag Me Too is not pro-woman. And being anti-hashtag Me Too is not being anti-woman. As a good lady friend of mine I've known for 30-some years, she said, "Joe," she said, "I look all right, don't I?" I said, "You look damn good. You go to the gym 3 or 4 or 5 times a week when you get the time. Yeah, watch your diet." She said, "And I do my nails tastefully, get my hair done tastefully. My wardrobe is tasteful. I try to stay on top of the game, and I try to become erudite in my conversation by learning about things so I can have a conversation." And then they got all these damn fool women running around here trying to scare off all the men I've been trying to attract. What the hell's wrong with them?
Mm-hmm.
So you have that. And you have a problem right now, I've noticed, with the young people. They don't have a clue what to say. See, they don't have any male role models that show them how to deal with a woman. If they're guys and if they're girls, they don't have any female role models. And it has gotten so bad that in that crowd 18 to 25, there are more boy virgins 18 to 25 than girl virgins. There are more boys staying at home with a parent 30 and under than there are girls. Only 32% of the college undergrads in America are male. That's all ethnicity. Only 36% of the graduate students are male, and only 44% of the workforce is male. And in that crowd, 18 to 35, there is a myth out there about women getting paid less for the same work than the males. I know that steps on a lot of people's feet, but the truth of the matter is that there have been a number of out-of-court settlements because the guys were getting paid less for the same job than the girls were. 35 and down. Now, you have a situation where all ethnicities involved in America, this is 10 years out of date, but as of 2011, and the statistics have only gotten worse, 42% of all Americans 35 and under were born out of wedlock. That's all ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
It's 80-some percent, 20 and under are born out of wedlock now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some myths like child support. Your president, the Kenyan mulatto Bush money boy, Barack Obama, got Jesse Jackson very aggravated and said he needed his balls cut off on that open mic back in 2007 at the Father's Day event, when Obama said black men are the worst in America when it comes to paying child support. That is a damn lie. And I knew that Jesse Jackson knew better than that because he was sitting next to me on an airplane for 4 hours, not a month before that. We had discussed it. Oh. And we had regular judicial conferences in Tennessee where you had to, for 30 years, I had to take the equivalent of 16 college unit hours a year.
Oh, Judge Joe Brown, I got to let you go. I'm going to have you back on. I'm glad your voice went for a whole hour. I'm going to have you back on. I'll call you later. Thank you for being a guest. My guest was Judge Joe Brown. This is the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells. I'll see you next week.